This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
Hi folks, this is Mark Bittman from Food with Mark Bittman, and I'm going to share some money-saving tips when it comes to shopping at Whole Foods Market. It's great to be a Prime member when you shop at Whole Foods Market because you get an extra 10% off all sales, excluding alcohol. On Tuesdays, take advantage of deals like buy one, get one 50% off on packaged soups and $2 off of their no antibiotics ever rotisserie chicken. Huge Friday savings on ready-to-eat sushi rolls, 12 for $12 all live oysters, any hot one-topping pizza for just $12, and there are even more deals. There are so many ways to save at Whole Foods Market, and now you know.
Hey Prime members, are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts, included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free, or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Abergavenny Food Festival. And I'm Sheila Dillon, presenter of the food programme on BBC Radio 4. And for people at home, we're inside a vast tent decorated amazingly with lots of embroidered stuffed vegetables. This is the dome inside the walls of Abergavenny Castle. It's been here since the 11th century, and now where the discussions at this remarkable festival usually happen. What we're discussing today is what the industrial food that's taken over our country, the world, the food that this festival stands against, is doing to our brains, our moods, and our ability to think. It's a serious question. So we're going to get serious with four people who know the subject from different angles and who both have experience and knowledge. First of all, Chef Heston Blumenthal, who recently went public about his diagnosis of bipolar and having ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. He's been one of the most influential chefs of modern times through the cooking he pioneered at the Fat Duck in Bray. Snail porridge is what I ate when I first did a programme with you, Heston. Is that still on the menu and there's still your snail farm?
It's not on the menu, but it is. If you want to order it, we've got it. I shouldn't have said that now. No. Bugger. I've started, so I've finished. So, yes, it's not printed on the menu, but it's there.
And the snail farm that I went to visit to bring the snails, that's still there? The
snail farm is still there.
That's good. Kimberley Wilson is a chartered psychologist and author of Unprocessed, How the Food We Eat is Fueling Our Mental Health Crisis. On the cover is a line from Professor Tim Spector. It says, "This book will change lives and hopefully policy." Well, we'll come to this in more detail in a minute, Kimberley. But briefly, have there been any policy changes since your book was published?
No.
No.
And right now there is a huge missed opportunity happening, which I will talk about a bit later on.
Okay. Natalie Hackett is head teacher at New Lubbesthorpe Primary School in Leicestershire. She was crowned School Leader Food Hero of 2024 at the Jamie Oliver School Food Awards. You say, Natalie, that food runs through every part of the curriculum at your school. What effect is that having on the children and on the community around the school?
Yes, it really is something that the children notice before they even decide which school to come to. And our children do make the decision as much as the parents. The fact we've got a garden with chickens and we have our own bees and everybody is involved. And I think in summary, the children think that is the normal education system. But what we know is we have managed to put that as part of our curriculum in everything we can think of. And dinner times, it's a central part of what we're doing.
Okay, Natalie, we'll talk about what effect that's having on the mental health of the children in a few minutes. And finally, Dr. Ally Jaffee. Now, Ally, in 2019, you won a BBC Food and Farming Award for co-founding Nutritank when you were a medical student. Nutritank was set up to radically improve medical education, to make sure that future doctors learned that food, along with exercise, is central to health. Ally, you're now what's newly called a resident doctor, specialising in psychiatry. What changes since you were a medical student have there been to the medical curriculum?
So I'd say we're doing well from an undergraduate point of view. We've got a whole group of universities now that have it as a central part of their curriculum. Namely, Brighton and Sussex Medical School actually have a dietitian on their medical school faculty that goes through the medical school curricula to make sure there's enough nutrition. And Imperial College London even have health coaching. So we've got some really trailblazing medical schools. Where we're falling down is in postgraduate medical education. So when people start to specialise, like I have in psychiatry and in all the other specialties, we really need to see more.
Okay. Well, this topic today, brain and health, is definitely getting more attention. I made a program on food and mood in 2020 about this new science investigating the effects of what we eat on how our brains work. I said then that what is becoming increasingly evident is the role that food has in warding off depression and anxiety. Last year, because the research is advancing fast, my colleague Dan Saladino produced another program, Feeding Your Brain, A User's Guide, one of the most downloaded episodes of the food program of 2023. But in public, those discussions are still rare. The robust science exists, but it's still a contentious subject. Much is still unknown. So, Kimberley, where do we begin? What do we know for certain about the effect of food on the brain?
What we know for certain is that the brain is made of food. So we understand that the nutritional status, her fatty acid status of the mother at conception makes a difference to baby brain health and overall birth outcomes 9 months later. So we already know at the point of conception, and it takes 3 months to make an egg and to make a sperm cell, so we're talking preconception nutrition, we know that that's really important. We know, for example, that mothers who consume more fish during their pregnancies have babies who have bigger and better connected brains than mothers who do not. We know, for example, folic acid, everyone's recommended folic acid to reduce neural tube defects. That's one nutrient. We know there are other nutrients that do similar things. Most of what happens during pregnancy is about developing the brain. That demands really good quality nutrition, and what we know for sure is that most people in this country aren't getting the nutrients required for the very early stages of brain development, which set us up for resilience later on in childhood and then in adulthood.
So that's in pre-pregnancy, pregnancy and childhood, but what do we know about adults?
Later on. So we see a range of associations. For example, we know in cohort studies, so if you take a group of people at baseline, so if I took this entire room and I split you in half, and you guys are going to go off and have a lovely Mediterranean-style diet with lots of fruits and veggies and fiber and oily fish. You guys... We know that in 10 years, the Mediterranean-style diet, you guys are going to have around a 30% reduced risk of developing depression, all else being equal. We also see other associations with things like psychiatric conditions. So when we think about things like FEP, so first episode psychosis, and these are associations at the moment, but we know that people who go in to their first episode of psychosis have low B vitamins, often low folic acid, low B12, often low vitamin D. Vitamin D is essential for your dopaminergic system, so ADHD, Parkinson's, all of those sorts of things, again, also very low in pregnancy and low in the general population. So we see these associations, and what we need is a bit more research to bear out the evidence and the mechanisms underneath that.
I mean, I remember being on a panel with you before, and you were saying people don't seem to grasp that the brain is a very hungry organ, and they don't eat to feed that hungry organ.
Not at all. So when we think about food, we tend to think, is it going to make, well, hopefully we're thinking, is it delicious? But often after that is it going to make me fat? is it going to make me thin? Maybe will it make me live a bit longer, reduce my cancer risk? What we're not thinking about is what it does for our brains. Your brain is the hungriest organ in the body. So it is using right now a quarter of all of the calories that your total body is burning through while you're sitting here, even though it's only about 2% of your overall body weight. So it's burning through a huge amount of energy, and it needs a lot of nutrients to function. And your body can store energy in the form of fat. Your brain cannot store energy. Your brain needs a constant supply of energy, nutrients, and oxygen, so a good blood supply, healthy blood vessels, in order to function well. And the nutrients that your brain needs come from whole foods, fruits and vegetables, oily fish. Fiber helps to protect the blood-brain barrier, and we're just not eating those foods. And so the most important organ in your body, your mood, your dreams, your hopes, your ability to socialize, is not getting what it needs to function well for most people.
Natalie Hackett, have you seen changes in the children at your school, in their ability to focus and in their moods since you brought in good food?
Yes, and I think the good thing about having your outdoor kitchen and the fruits available at all times, that the children, if they are feeling hungry, rather than asking if they can get an unhealthy snack or wanting to bring crisps or chocolate in, actually they'll just say, and it's the culture of the school, can we go to the garden to go and pick some fruit? And yesterday I noticed the children were going off to get some strawberries and some tomatoes, and they were so excited because they remember back to when they actually planted them. So it's not just about the fact that they're picking them, it's about how much they've used we've got core values in our school, so how much they've used their empathy to really care for the plants before actually getting to that point where they're feeling hungry. Their mood completely changes once they've gone to the garden, picked a few tomatoes, come back and actually sat down back to their lessons again. But that's the normal process.
So you can't divide that off from eating that food. I mean, the two things are interconnected. Dr. Ally Jaffee, you've now worked with many kinds of patients suffering from mental illnesses. Does your experience tell you that diet is a cause of some mental states or something that exacerbates underlying conditions?
So I think mental illness, as we all know, is very multifaceted, and we can't really say that diet is a cause, but rather it's a great target for us to use therapeutically. We in psychiatry use the biopsychosocial model. So we look at the biological factors, which could be anything from genetics, to the psychological factors, which could be if you've experienced trauma or any type of abuse, to social factors around socioeconomic status and where you grow up. And that informs your likelihood of developing mental illness. So I would say that diet is something that can be spread across all three of those. And we really need to use it as a target, especially for patients with severe mental illness, which consists of bipolar disorder, psychoaffective disorder, and schizophrenia. Because these patients, unfortunately, from the research, they have an early mortality gap, which means that they have the horrible outcome of potentially dying 15 to 20 years younger than the general population due to their mental illness and due to the physical health impact around metabolic disease problems from the medications we use to treat it. So, of course, diet will have the most profound effect if we can get it early into the recovery model of every mental health patient to be able to actually reduce the side effects of medications, but also for psychological well-being. So I think it's quite a politician-y answer in that we can't really say yet that diet is a cause, but we know that from multiple studies that people who suffer from depression and anxiety, their gut microbiomes have a different profile to the general population, and that's namely around having a lower diversity of gut microbe populations that are beneficial to health. But unfortunately, as Kimberley will note, the research is not there yet to be able to say there is a clear cause and effect.
But there is research to show that a low diversity
absolutely
does link to poor health. Heston, I mean, this is something, very near to you because you were only diagnosed with bipolar a year ago?
Yeah, less, actually.
Last year. And you've spoken about that and about the benefits of eating mindfully to help in some way. How do you mindfully eat?
You can do it just with one raisin. So you look at the raisin, you see where the light and dark and the reflection is. You think about what that raisin could taste like, and its texture. Then you go slowly to it with your thumb and forefinger, pick up the raisin, and then roll it carefully, gently between your thumb and forefinger. See the reflection again and how the texture of the raisin softens. Then you imagine what it's going to taste like. You put it to your mouth. Before you do that, you smell it. We don't always smell the same things from the left and right nostril. So you smell it, put it between your lips, maybe just feel it on your lips, then into your mouth. Roll it around your mouth with your tongue. What flavours and tastes like sugars and stuff can you perceive? Then you bite into it, but what's your expectation of the result of biting into that raisin? You end up with like a little mini explosion because you've built up a story around it. Also, if the raisin has been grown by, 3 generations of a particular family, and you've got some information on that, it gives more storytelling to it. I think that we would benefit from slowing things down. After I've definitely slowed down. My speech was 10 times faster than it is now. So by slowing things down, you reduce inflammation. Mm-hmm. How does it feel when you eat it as well? So how does your gut feel? There's a reason why listen to your gut. For me, it's a really powerful thing.
Gut feeling.
Gut feeling. And you don't know if it's something you haven't done before, then you just start doing it. You think, well, I don't really know how my gut's feeling. But if more regularly you do it, the more you can compare it to other moments that you remember about your gut.
Let's have a quick look at food as recovery, food as medicine. Kimberley, are there foods that can help improve mental being, like omega-3 or?
I suppose I'll split it out into overall diet and individual nutrients, or what might be called nutraceuticals. Overall diets, the largest evidence base, and that's just often where the money is in the Mediterranean style diet. But what I want to say when I say that is it doesn't really matter where you're from. It's about the traditional foodways, whether it's a Nordic diet, the Okinawan Japanese diet, the South American diet, coastal diets on the African coast. Really what we're talking about is a minimally processed, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, high in fiber, access to preformed DHA, the omega-3 fatty acids. All of those sorts of things tend to be associated with a lower risk of mood disorders in particular. When it comes to using things kind of therapeutically as adjuncts, and all of the diet is adjunctive, so alongside your normal treatment, so alongside your medication, alongside your therapy. When it comes to something like depression, actually supplementation with omega-3, where you're getting about 1 gram per day, and 60% of that as a ratio is EPA, which is one of the forms of omega-3, has been shown to be supportive for depression. There's less evidence for things like anxiety, but again, some of the new data on what's happening in the gut microbiome, associations between gut microbiome and stress and anxiety, associations in particular around the role of fiber. There isn't a single age group in the UK that's getting enough fiber. Only 9% of us are getting the recommended amount of fiber, which is 30 grams 9%. Per day, 9%. And the thing about fiber is that when your gut microbiome breaks it down, it produces these compounds called short-chain fatty acids. They travel in your bloodstream up to your brain, and they protect what's called the blood-brain barrier, which is, I call it the bouncer for your brain. It stops toxic compounds and bits of food getting into your brain. And the breakdown of your blood-brain barrier is associated with things like neuroinflammation, like Alzheimer's disease, and other mood disorders. So we're seeing these associations. As I say, we need more info, but we can see the mechanisms and why it might be important, and why things like having a minimally processed diet are associated with better brain health and mental health outcomes.
Ali, you did a project with some patients where you showed them how to create meals that were better for their brain health on a psychiatry ward. How did that work, and was it successful?
I'm still surprised it did work, but I was very pleased with it. So I spent some time on a male psychiatric intensive care unit. So that's like the A&E when it comes to psychiatry. So people there are very unwell, a lot of acute episodes of psychosis, and it was a male environment, and there'd been a lot of of recorded violence on the ward as well. And lucky for me, there was a brilliant mental health nurse called Matt Wall who'd already introduced an exercise quality improvement project where he got some of the male patients to go and do strength training with him and prove that it reduced violent episodes on the ward. So the foundations were really brilliant there to introduce a cooking project. So I came in and I ran a 5-week nutritional psychiatry influenced cooking project where I prepared the meals based on what the preferences were of the patient. So we had a lot of Mexican or a healthy fry up, and we even did fresh pasta making. And what I did was I applied the nutritional psychiatry principles and did a kind of modified Mediterranean dietary approach based on the SMILES trial. And we ate all the meals together as staff and patients, and it was summer, so we ate outside all together. So it wasn't only that the foods I was preparing was nutrient dense and all the young men were really interested in trying new colours and flavours, but it also allowed them to be educated around the impact of taste and good quality foods to kind of reduce their Deliveroo and meals that they ordered into the ward. And one of the male patients said to me, "Doc, I can't believe you got me to go from KFC to kimchi," because I was introducing fermented food to them to explain how exciting they were. And each meal I managed to price it less than £2 per person because, as we know, the NHS is on budget. And it was just incredible. It was a feasibility study. It was once a week, so I couldn't really create meaningful data around this caused their psychosis to completely go into remission and they lost this amount of weight, which helped their metabolic factors. But what I could see anecdotally and from the qualitative evidence was just how powerful food is and why we shouldn't be so reductive and reduce food to nutraceuticals and supplements, and the impact that food has to bring people together. And the consultant said to me, "Ali, you've made my job a lot easier because all these patients really dislike me. I've sectioned them, and being able to just share a meal just shows how normalizing it can be and to learn about each other's cultures as well."
Yeah. Gosh. Heston, when you were diagnosed either with ADHD and bipolar, did any of the doctors you saw talk to you about diet and the role of food?
No, not at all. My ADHD diagnosis was about 10 years ago. My bipolar less than a year, but they didn't talk about food at all.
None of them?
No.
You're a chef. They didn't even bring up the...
They knew I was a chef.
But what do you make of what you just heard Ali say?
Oh, I completely agree. And for me, we've talked about fibre, which reduces inflammation. Also, inflammation can be created by your mood. If you're anxious or, you can have an inflamed gut, which will affect the brain.
And so what Ali's saying is it's the communality, the doctor sitting down with you, the doctor doing the cooking, as well as the food itself.
It's like the Mediterranean diet thing. I think a lot of the Mediterranean diet, it's not just that. The ingredients, yes. But it's the fact that it's a more social diet.
Yeah. It's not grab and go.
And we need to connect. Human beings need to connect with something.
Yeah. Let's move on to talking about children and their mental health now and in the future. Natalie is the head teacher of a primary school, as we said. Just tell us how you made food this central part of the curriculum.
It started off really small because the current school I'm in started off with 47 children in a brand new town and development. So a little bit tricky when there's only one of you. I always call it one person dancing, trying to get this moving, and then everyone starts to join you. And we're now at nearly 400 children, so it's very different. But the first thing we did was look at what we'd been given. And some schools, they don't get much land, but we did get a gorgeous area to start planting. So we involved the community. We actually got the toddlers involved, and we did go through a period of COVID, so it was tricky, but actually outdoors was the best place to be. So we looked at as many ways as we could to get looking at what DT does to design and technology, what's in the curriculum there, and how can we make our outdoor area work for that curriculum. Then let's have another look at science. What does science do? Started to get in touch with a lovely man, we call him the bee farmer, and he told us all about what we could do for years 5 and 6. And years 5 and 6 do this wonderful pollination project now, and we've got our own bees. The children love the fact that they can not only get involved in what we plant to decide on then what the honey is going to taste like. And all these sort of decisions and discussions are done with the community and with the children, because the children are part of this. When they're actually having their jar of honey and they can't wait to show off the labelling that they've done, because it's very merchandise and it's all about New Lubbesthorpe at this point, they are so proud of it because they've been on the journey. But on that, we actually started to have chicks. And I was like, we've got a local farm that want the chicks. And the staff was saying, no, we want to build that into our curriculum. So we kept them, and now they're chickens. And they lay us 3 eggs a day. They are free range. They use the whole garden. But we use the eggs, we use the honey, and we use that in our cooking and in our design and technology curriculum. And the children speak in depth about how pollination works because they're part of it.
Kimberley, that sounds absolutely lovely. I mean, does science say anything about why you would want to do what Natalie's doing in her school?
So I think there are a few things. One is in helping children to develop a broad interest in food and to be able to eat a range of foods. And that requires being really introduced very early to a wide range of foods, because children become kind of phobic of novelty at some points. And so if you've not introduced a new set of flavors, usually by around the age of 5, then it becomes much more difficult to introduce new flavors later on. And then you might end up then with an adult who finds it very difficult to broaden their diet. You can do it, but it takes a long time and a lot of effort and a lot of repetition.
Natalie, I mean, have you had difficulty getting children to eat new foods?
The conversations we normally have with parents is they won't eat the school dinner. We guarantee that they will eat the school dinner. We do something with the Soil Association, which is something that we've worked with in Leicestershire, that actually we do taste ed. So the children aren't put any pressure about eating, and it's very much what Heston was saying, really. They can smell it, they can taste it in their mouths if they want. They can watch their partner taste it and tell them what it tastes like. And the fact that children are playing with food, and we just put food in their tough trays where the children in early years are playing. So it's really just making it part of what they do and see, rather than them starting to develop a phobia. If children have, and some children do, it could just be the smell of something, or it could be the taste that they didn't like. We'll find different ways to using that. We did a bean project which helped the children really design the menu and find different ways to put the beans in there. And I think storybooks do help as well to guide the children into that story. There's one about the pea that tries to eat the head teacher. So they do want to eat all their peas because we don't want anything going wrong.
We can't avoid the subject of ultra-processed food, and 2/3 of a UK teenager's diet is now made up of ultra-processed food. What impact, Kimberley, has that kind of consumption having on them?
Sure. 2/3 of teenagers, but for 1 in 5 children, it's 78% of their calories come from ultra-processed foods as a category. There's still a bit of controversy over ultra-processed food as a category. It's still being decided and worked out. There is something like a 95% overlap with foods that are high in salt, fat, and sugar. So you can start there, and then you can say also perhaps they might have additional things like emulsifiers and flavorings and things like that. And there's lots of different ways that these foods could be impacting us. So one question is, are the emulsifiers or the lack of fiber, which tends to be typical of this group of foods, having an impact on our gut microbiomes and reducing the diversity there? From me in particular, and what I put in the book, is that if we've established that your brain is extremely hungry and needs a constant supply of nutrients, what happens when most of your diet is a group of foods which is by definition lower in these nutrients? So the higher your intake of ultra-processed foods, the lower your nutritional status of A, C, the B vitamins, minerals, your omega-3s. So essentially you'll have a full belly, but a hungry brain. And so the associations that we see tend to be things like poor attention, so worse attention. That can happen with hunger itself as well, but poor attention, inattention, problems with mood, a greater risk, particularly at the puberty. And puberty is an interesting time neurologically because there's a huge amount of pruning, changing of shape of the brain, but also it's the point at which teenagers, adolescents start to get more autonomy over what they eat. They might have pocket money, they're buying food on the way to school, on the way back from school, and that tends to be less healthy. So you've got a hungry brain that's actively changing, that's now getting less nutritious foods. And this is when we see this crossover point where there's a great vulnerability to things like anxiety, depression, and panic disorders.
Right. Heston, you've just become a grandfather.
Oh, yes, I have.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you know, I mean, we talked before this recording, that lots of parents worry about what their children are eating. You're a chef.
Yes.
You're a grandfather, you're a father. What can they do?
Parents are generally loving and caring. So I think if a child gets diagnosis at a younger age, then the parents will do what they think is best for the child. I think the more choice you expose your kids to, the choice of foods, the better.
You mean choice of real food?
Oh, yeah, choice, yes, thank you. Just give them a chance. Let them have a go at playing around. And people say, don't play with your food. Well, sorry. No way. The first thing a child can do to exercise some kind of control with the parents is just refuse to eat.
No.
And then just leave them. I'd leave them. They will eat. We're just going to be a bit concerned about it.
Hey, Prime members, are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
If you're joining us, this is the food programme for BBC Radio 4 from the Abergavenny Food Festival at a debate in front of an audience. Our question today is, how is it that some foods seem to do our heads in? And our panel is made up of Heston Blumenthal, Kimberley Wilson, Natalie Hackett and Dr Ally Jaffee. And at this point, let's move on to old age. And more is being learned every month about the connection between diet and brain diseases like dementia. Kimberley, if you could briefly tell us how much we know about that now, especially at a time when we see dementia being diagnosed in ever younger people.
Some of the strongest evidence we have about the protective role of nutrition on the brain comes from older age. And that's really important because neurological disorders like Alzheimer's disease are the leading cause of death in the UK. So it's not heart disease, it's not cancer, it's not complications of diabetes, it's Alzheimer's disease. It's the disease that most adults are scared of, but it's the disease that most adults don't think there's anything that they can do about. Actually, we know from a global Lancet commission that up to 45% of global Alzheimer's disease cases could be delayed or prevented through changes in lifestyle. So almost half of all cases, there's something that we can do about it. And the three things that come together as being able to slow, halt, and in some cases, reverse cognitive decline, early cognitive decline, not kind of full-blown Alzheimer's, but what's called mild cognitive impairment or very early Alzheimer's disease, are improvements in nutrition, physical activity, so getting exercise, staying socially engaged, and then making sure you're always challenging your brain. That combination of things has been shown to slow brain aging.
So we've established so far that food really does have an effect on brain, mood, anxiety. I mean, we know that. So what about the official dietary advice given to us by the government? You know, the NHS Eat Well Guide and the RDAs and the like. I'll begin with you, Ally. How much are medics aware of this, of all the things we're talking about? And what's the interaction with this official advice?
So medics are unfortunately blissfully unaware most of the time around the connection between food and health, and even more unaware around the connection between food and mood. So that was why I set off on the mission with my co-founder, Dr. Ian Broadley, 8 years ago when we were Bristol medical students, to get more nutrition education into the curricula. And luckily, we're seeing that's coming a long way, and the next generation of medics will have that. But you have to ask, what about the medics who are practicing today? And for instance, the doctors that were treating Heston, how do we educate them? So one of my key missions, and who knows how long this will take me to get done, but as you know, I'm a very determined person, and within psychiatry I would really love to see trainee psychiatrists like myself taught to take a diet history on admission, depending on whether the patient is in crisis or not, to really establish, like what Kimberley says, we need 30 grams of fibre a day to meet the requirements, to just understand what is the snapshot of that patient's diet and how can we on the ward actually create a therapeutic environment where the staff are informed to help empower the patients around diet. And if the staff aren't trained, and if the teachers aren't trained, for instance, in a school, that's never going to trickle down to the end user, the patient and the consumer. So I'd really love to see an upheaval in all the specialty training to have more diet and lifestyle on the map.
Kimberley, I mean, how much of that advice, in the NHS Eat Well Guide and, advice on RDAs has to do with brain health? I wish radio listeners could see Kimberley's expression, which is, are you kidding me?
None at all. And it's really extraordinary way. One of the recommendations I put at the end of Unprocessed for how we can improve population brain health is to start with improving the recommendations for nutrition during pregnancy, because that's when brains are made. And I was delighted that NICE right now doing an update of those recommendations. And then I looked at the documentation and I wept. Because on the expert panel, there's dozens of very fantastic people, I'm absolutely sure. There was one vacancy for someone with an expertise in brain development that they left empty. So all of pregnancy is about building the brain, and there wasn't a single person on that expert panel advocating for the brain when we're talking about recommendations for nutrition in pregnancy. So I don't know when the next update will be, but that's a completely missed opportunity to help people think about, at least know, get it as part of a public conversation, to have people who are entering pregnancy thinking about, well, actually, what do I want to do to help build my baby's brain, reduce their risk of mental health conditions or developmental conditions or disorders of attention in the future, because we know nutrition can do that. We know that things like choline supplementation during pregnancy is associated with better sustained attention at age 9. That's in the research evidence. That's the recommendation that researchers have been making for years, and we're not implementing it. And the same with something like omega-3 fatty acids. Apart from their role in brain development, we know that supplementing with omega-3s during pregnancy reduces the risk of early preterm birth. And that was a Cochrane recommendation about 4 years ago, and that's not included in the new update at all either. There's this wealth of information that pregnant women will not be getting because they've not put it in the NICE guidelines.
We contacted NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, and on Kimberley Wilson's first point about the unfilled vacancy for a brain development expert, they say they advertised the role multiple times unsuccessfully. On her second point, that NICE should have added choline and omega-3 DHA to the list of recommended supplements for pregnancy, NICE said that these nutrients were not included in the scope, and there wasn't a strong signal from their stakeholders that these nutrients should be included. They say the focus of this work was not so much on the content of optimal nutrition, which there is already government advice about, but rather on what professionals should do to improve uptake of existing advice on nutrition. How easy is it, Heston, for example, when you've been going through these really difficult times, how easy is it even to think about what you're eating when you're faced with all Ally's described on the psychiatric ward?
Yeah, the trouble is, I'm not a typical
No, you're
eater.
not. But even for you as a chef who knows as much as you do.
Yes.
Did you care what you ate when you were hospitalised after your...
Well, when I was hospitalised, I didn't have a choice.
But did you eat what you were given?
Yeah, I ate. I did. I can't tell. It's like looking back at my bipolar, or my ADHD, for example. And by the way, it manifests, I don't know if anyone can connect to this, but has anyone found their telephone in the fridge? Here we go. Maybe a higher percentage than we think. I had a dustpan and brush in there once as well. Who can relate? So, first I thought maybe it was sleep deprivation that caused me. I was bruleeing in lemon tart. So, sprinkled the sugar over the tart, got the blowtorch, and I walked to the tap. I turned the hot water on. And I remember thinking, you can't possibly light a blowtorch with cold water, so I was trying to light the blowtorch with water. So all of this stuff, and it goes on. I'll give you just a couple more, because it happens now. The day before yesterday, I was cleaning my teeth. I saw some cotton buds. I thought, I'll multitask. So, this here. Anyway, I was scrubbing my gums with the cotton buds. Oh, blimey. So in terms of foods, I do eat a lot of foods with fibre.
It is odd, isn't it, the way that there are all these papers coming out about an epidemic of mental health issues, and you read these papers and they never mention food. Why do you think that is, Ali? I mean, is it we don't care about food in Britain? I mean, is it different in France or Italy?
It's a westernised issue, and I think, unfortunately, it comes from an ancient philosopher, Descartes, who created the mind-body problem.
Yeah.
He suggested that the mind and body are completely separate entities, and that had profound impact on society and how we arrange our healthcare system. So, as everyone knows, our healthcare system is in complete silos. You see your gastroenterologist for your gut, and then you see your ENT surgeon for your ears, and it's very challenging to say that psychiatry only deals with the mind. So I think we're just waiting for that real paradigm shift, but we are really starting to see it from the bottom up with brilliant thought leaders. And over in Australia, they've got an established food and mood centre led by Professor Felice Jacka, who is really spearheading research and application in this area. But we're blissfully behind in the UK, and unfortunately their guidelines have even updated around psychiatric illnesses to include diet and lifestyle as targets, but we're still waiting for that when it comes to our psychiatric guidelines in the UK. So got a lot of work to do.
Got a lot of work to do. We have times for a couple of questions from the audience. We have a microphone here. Does anyone have a burning question?
Can the right foods impact how well you and your body manage the menopause?
Kimberley?
I think the jury's a bit out on that one at the moment. There are recommendations around increasing your intake of soy isoflavones, for example, so around soy and tofu, in order to kind of give you an alternate source of estrogen. But actually, I think one of the issues is the research gap for women's health. So we just don't study the woman's body, and so the understanding of the impact of estrogen. So for a long time, we were thinking about menopause is just hot flushes and sleepless nights and sweats and you feel uncomfortable. Actually, it's much more complex than that. Estrogen is neuroprotective, and there are many receptors for estrogen across the brain. And so when you have a drop in estrogen, actually you're getting a range of effects across different brain systems. They just haven't been properly researched. So there'll be lots of information out there. I'm not sure how much of it is really kind of certified and strong, but we have a huge gap in research on female bodies and the menopause and the impact of menopause on the brain. What I would suggest is The XX Brain by Dr. Lisa Mastoni. She is one of the leading researchers on the impact of the menopause on the brain changes and brain energy caused by the menopause. So I would start there.
Thank you very much. We have time for just one more question. The man with the beard over here.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the panel. Fascinating topic, really. But sorry not to finish on a question. I just wanted to say how brave I think Heston has been for being here today. And I just wanted to say I think your innovation... Thank you. Just to finish that, your innovative approach to cooking and your relentless pursuit of excellence have been a tremendous source of inspiration to myself and many across the world. And I think your creativity and passion have not only transformed the way we think about food, but also shown us the boundless possibilities within the culinary arts. So thank you for sharing your journey, and I think I speak for us all when we wish you the greatest happiness and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I know there are other people, but we've just run out of time. I'm very, very sorry to say. So thank you, Heston Blumenthal, Kimberley Wilson, and Natalie Hackett, and Dr. Ally Jaffee. And of course, massive thanks to the Abergavenny Food Festival. And thank you all for being such an attentive audience. It was just terrific. Thank you. Thank you all.
Hi everyone. Hey, that's Mariana Spring. I'm Sarah Smith, and we are a couple of the hosts of America. And right now, as you might imagine, it's not very quiet over in Podcast HQ. We've been keeping ourselves very busy. Yeah, because the two of us, along with Justin Webb and Anthony Zerker, are now getting together a few times a week as we chat through trying to untangle all the twists and turns and developments in the US presidential election. And it would be fair to say there have been quite a lot of twists and turns already. We've also been chatting a lot about what happens on social media. My favourite topic. If you're interested in US politics, you want to understand what is going on, then I think you might really like our podcast, which is simply called America. You can listen to it on BBC Sounds. Until then, we'll see you later.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text the long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever!
Good taste is easy to spot, but hard to pin down. You know it when you see it. And in today's culture, there's no greater signifier of taste than the car you drive. You want something sophisticated, but not stodgy. Daring, yet classic. Approachable, but with an air of opulence. That's where the Range Rover Evoque comes in. The reductive exterior is an elegant expression of Range Rover DNA, and the chiseled taillight graphics give the Evoque a sense of motion even at standstill. Explore the Range Rover Evoque at LandRoverUSA.com.